Hey guys, so I'm here to give you the rundown on Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is called Georgie's Room and the House on Niebolt Street. So if you recall in Chapter 7, the day they were in the dam, the day they were in the Barrens and they had built the dam, the cop came and interrupted right before Stan was about to tell his story, but Bill had let them know about his story, which was the photograph in the room and how Georgie winked and he had thrown a photo album and blood came out. Ben had told his story about the clown on the canal that turned into a mummy that was trying to grab him and pull him below. And Eddie had told his story about the leper and the house on Niebolt Street where he had seen the leper, and after going back a second time, even though the first time he had seen the leper crawl out of the porch, the leper had offered to give him a blowjob for $0.25. He reduced his price nicely enough for $0.10, and Eddie still refused. But Eddie felt drawn back there, and went back a second time to see if his mind had played tricks on him. And no, the leper did come out, and the leper did give chase and tried to kill him. So the only one who didn't have a story so far is Richie, and the cop interrupts as Dan is about to tell his story. Chapter 8 starts off with adult Richie driving to Derry. He's feeling sick to his stomach. He's somewhat comforted by the thoughts of his friends. He thinks of the day at the dam and how building the dam together seemed to weld them together forever, especially after they all took the blame for it when the cop came down. So, of course, you know that scene in the movie where he's like, who's responsible for this? And there's like, well, I did it. That plays out in the book, too. And for Richie, that's kind of like where the real friendship was sealed. It was solid. Because they didn't really know each other that well. I mean, Bill knew Richie and Bill knew Eddie. Eddie was his best friend. But as far as Ben, he was a loner, never really talked to anybody, didn't have any friends at all, even though he lived there his whole life. Mike's not even mentioned at this point, young Mike, and neither is young Beverly, besides Ben having a crush on her in class. So, as Richie is, and Richie's kind of weak sauce. I mean, I wish he wasn't, because I love Richie. But adult Richie's kind of weak sauce. Adult Richie, when he got the phone call, he threw up all kinds and stuff. And now that he's driving to there, he keeps pulling over and throwing up. Same thing. He's thinking about on his friends as he's standing there trying to recover. And he flashbacks to 1958. The day at the dam. And so they get scolded for the dam. It had flooded the streets, and the cop basically lets them know that they're playing in shit water. He hangs out and smokes a cigarette and drinks from a flask while they tear it apart. Afterwards, Eddie and Stan go to Eddie's house to find out if a guy on the radio is really white or black, since he'll be appearing for the first time on TV. And I think that's hilarious, because, I mean, 1958, nowadays, in 2017, we don't even second think something like that. You know, you see a black guy on TV, you just see a guy on TV for, 99.9% of the population. But for them, they only heard this person on the radio, and so Eddie and Stan made a bet on whether the guy was really black or white, and Eddie was thinking he was black, but hoping that if he was, he'd be able to hide it from his mom, because his mom wouldn't let him listen to a black guy. So, it's 1958, guys. Eddie and Stan go on their way. Richie and Bill talk and head over to Richie's house. And Richie lets Bill know that he wants to go over to Bill's house and see Georgie's room. Which we all know that's probably a smart idea. I mean, to be quite honest, if it was me back in those days, I would definitely want to go to the room. Horror movie error number 1. But I definitely would want to be like, okay, let's go check it out. And for Richie being such weak sauce as an adult, he definitely was a little bit more braver as a kid. They go into Georgie's room, and Richie gets this eerie feeling, tells Bill, I don't even know how you could stand being in here. And all of a sudden, he gets the realization of death. For like the first time, death really hits him. Like, he sees the bed being made, and he realizes nobody will ever sleep in that bed again. He sees colorings on the wall. He sees colorings on the table. He realizes nobody would ever finish those colorings. And then he thinks of little Georgie sleeping in his coffin, never to wake up again. And so Richie at this point has like freaked himself out. and he just wants to find a photo album and see what's going on there and get out. So they pick up the book, and it has bloodstains that Richie tries to tell himself that it's probably only dried ketchup. The picture of Georgie is missing, so that picture that winked at Bill is now gone missing. And in its place, there's a picture of downtown Derry, 1930. So the pages start to flip back and forth the way they flip for Bill. They see two kids in the picture, and surprised to see that these two kids in the picture are in fact them. So they're dressed in 1930 wear, but it is Bill and Richie in the picture. And the picture starts to move as they're staring at it. And they see themselves walking along, and they're looking in a certain direction, and a dog comes running out from that direction. So, you know, Richie and Bill are seeing a picture of themselves move in this black and white photo. And then Richie in the picture points over to the canal, and Bill turns around towards the canal, and the two boys walk over there. Well, as they look over the canal, over the bridge, Pennywise jumps out, and it's like a horrible Jack-in-the-Box. And the two kids get scared. Of course, Bill and Richie, as they're looking at themselves, get scared by Pennywise. They also get scared and throw the book. So Bill runs back to the book and picks it up, and Richie's like, "No, don't do it. What are you, freaking crazy? You know, don't open that book again. Don't you dare open that book again," which Bill does. Because before they threw the picture, Bill had reached into the picture, and his hand had gone through and turned black and white, and he felt he was being yanked in there, and then Richie pulls him out of there. And Bill has cut his fingers up, you know. And so Richie's like pretty irritated that Bill picked up the photo album again, and now Bill's searching through it, and he's like seems pissed off. He's getting blood all over it, and he doesn't find his brother's picture, but it's still the 1930 photo. And when he sees the photo, he sees Pennywise is no longer there, and neither are the two kids, but there's a balloon kind of popping out from over the canal. And so at this point, they're pretty convinced that it's something else, that it's not a person killing anybody, that it's the clown. And Richie says, "Yeah, it's the clown. It's the monster." And the monster is different for everybody. The monster was the mummy for Ben, and it was the leper for Eddie, and for Bill it was the photo album and stuff like that. So he's like letting him know that, yeah, there is a monster here, and it's not really the clown, but there's something here, and it's killing kids. So these two have wisely cracked the code, and for Bill, it obviously haunts him. You know, they get the hell out of the room and stuff. But for Richie, it doesn't seem to faze him all that much. It's still kind of like, even though he's just seen what he's seen with the photo album and the picture moving, and he sees him and Bill were in the picture, and he sees that Bill almost got sucked into the picture, it doesn't affect him as much as he thinks it would. So Richie, being Richie, wants to go to the movie theater and watch a double feature of horror movies the next day. He asked Stan if he wanted to go, but Stan was grounded for accidentally breaking a window. He asked Bill, but Bill was in speech class. He asked Eddie, but Eddie had to go visit his aunt's house. And then finally he calls Ben up after looking for his number in the photo book and phone book. And Ben says, okay, he'll meet him there. As it's kind of like telling Richie's story, you kind of get the sense that Richie has a pretty good home life. His dad's kind of joshing him about things and tells him to do his chores, and his mom is kind of like, you know, making breakfast and all that. So Richie has a pretty good home life, unlike Beverly, of course. On his way there to the theater, Richie sees Beverly on a bench. He likes Beverly as a friend. She seems like a really pretty guy, is the way he describes it. He sits next to her, and he starts doing some of his voices. She has a huge purple bruise on her face. Richie's been playing with a yo-yo on his way over. Sorry, reading from my notes. Beverly took it and showed him some tricks. So, as Richie was walking over there, he was trying to do, I don't know, sleeping dog or something on a yo-yo. And Beverly took it away from him and showed him all sorts of tricks, and he was kind of surprised that for a girl, she knew how to do those types of things. And as they were sitting there playing with the yo-yo, some kids from the school came by and teased them for sitting together. You know, Beverly and Richie sitting in a tree, Kissing. Richie and Bev talked crap back, and after they were talking shit to them, Bev flips them off and they leave kind of disgusted. So I mean, their tone is kind of like, you know, that kiddie stuff, and Beverly seems more rough around the edges than everybody else. She cusses a lot, she smokes cigarettes, and she flips people off. So it's unclassy, I guess, but she's rough around the edges. So after these two leave, Richie invites her to the movies. She doesn't have any money, but he says he'll pay for her. So sarcastically she says, "Oh, my first date." And Richie tells her to shut up. After she keeps saying it after a while, he feels uncomfortable with it. She agrees to go, and Richie suddenly starts taking notice of her physically, and then realize that he might maybe have a crush on her. They wait for Ben at the theater. Ben runs up huffing, terrified to see Beverly once he saw her. And then Ben and Beverly kind of share this glance at each other, and Richie seems to get a little jealous. So even though he kind of always seen Beverly as this one of the guys type person, now he starts to realize that she's an actual girl and that she's probably a cool girl, and he feels a little bit jealous by the look that Ben and Beverly gave each other. Ben tells Richie he was there earlier, but he saw the bullies. You know, Henry Bowers, Belch, and Victor Chris. And Richie says, "If I was them, I wouldn't pay to see a horror movie. I would stay home and look in the mirror." Which we know in the miniseries happens after Richie chucks popcorn on him. But for them, it's outside, and all three are terrified and do not want to go have an encounter with Henry Bowers. So they decide to sit in the balcony to avoid Henry Bowers. They watch the werewolf movie. Bev hides in Ben's arm, and the whole time he is freaking out because she is the love of his life. After the movie, Ben noticed that Henry had spotted them. They leave out the side door, hoping that they can get away from the bullies, but when they do, they see that the bullies are already out waiting at the end of the alley. Henry charged at Ben. Beverly stood in the way. Richie stuck his foot out and tripped Henry, and then Henry skidded into the alley floor. Ben picked up a garbage can and hit Henry with it. Victor got in the way when they tried to run, but Ben butted him in the stomach. They ran, but Belch grabbed Beverly by the ponytail and threw her against the wall. She started running out of the alley. Richie helped Ben by stopping a fist that was meant for him by putting up a garbage lid. There was two other thugs at the end of the alley. They grabbed Ben at the end of the alley. Ben started fighting with them. Richie kicked one in the ass, knocking Bev loose. He told Ben and Bev to run. He got punched in the face, but was able to get away and run also. So the bullies were kind of assholes, and they caught up with them. And basically there was a fight in the alley. And at this point, Ben was kind of done with the shit after they were trying to hide because he was terrified, because if you remember in Ben's chapter, they carved an H into him, and he fought back after he got knocked down into the barrens. And so he knew that when Henry Bowers found him again, that Henry Bowers was going to be kicking his ass. And so they ran out into the alley, and Ben was pretty pissed off, and he ended up fighting with Henry. Of course, Richie tripped Henry, and which caused Ben to smash him with the garbage can. And then, of course, once Belch grabbed Beverly by the ponytail and threw her against the wall, Ben was going to go after him. So Ben, Bev, and Richie were all pretty excited about this. Beverly had said it was a great fight, and she was pretty stoked. They got to the police department. It's the only safe place, really. You know what I mean? You can't really hide anywhere else. But they stood in front of the police department, and they were making so much noise because they were celebrating that they had kicked these bullies' asses. And a cop yelled at them for them to scram. Richie's about to mouth off, but Ben tells him to shut up because he's always getting them in trouble. And Bev says, "Yeah, Richie, beep, beep," which my heart melts, you know, because that is like one of my favorite of all time things. My favorite quotes. I say it like all the time. I'll be like, beep, beep, You know, beep, beep, Richie. Whenever I tell my kids to get out of the way or to, like, shut up or whatever, you know what I mean? So as soon as I read that, I was like, my heart burns there too. Anyways, so Ben asks if Beverly's okay. She says yes. And when he asks her in such a way that she confirms her suspicion that Ben was probably the one that sent the card. And that's different from the miniseries, because in the miniseries she thinks it's Bill. But she already had a suspicion that it was Ben, and when he asks her the way he does, if she's okay, and then she realizes that it was him that sent the card. They went down to the Barrens. Bill came down later with a kid named Bradley. Richie saw that Bill and Bev gave each other googly eyes, decided that neither him or Ben would be jealous because Bill was their leader. He was good, like a knight. So even though Richie was starting to have feelings for Beverly and Ben had feelings for Beverly, Richie knew in his heart that if Beverly and Bill got together, that they wouldn't be jealous, that they would understand, because Bill was the leader. He was like a knight. He was a good person, good-hearted, and so he respected him. And so because of that, I guess they feel Beverly would have made the right choice. A few days later, Bill tells Richie he wants to go to see the house on Niebolt Street to see if he could see the leper. Another smart decision. Is it a thing I would do as a kid? Probably. I would probably go see this house. I would want to see this bum on Niebolt Street who offered Eddie 25 cents for a blowjob. I definitely would say, yeah, let's do this. So I could see Bill. For Bill, he wants confirmation that there's this other thing there, you know? And Richie's like, no, I don't. I already got proof that something happened, something's going on. I think there's a monster here. We're pretty damn sure that there's a monster killing kids, and he doesn't want to go. But Bill's like tit for tat, basically, you know what I mean? I let you see Georgie's room, and now I want to go see Niebolt Street, and you're coming with me. And so Richie finally agrees. He tells Richie that, yeah, he knows that this clown has murdered all the kids in town. He knows that the clown is behind all the disappearances. And if that's the truth, if he believes this, then he needs to believe that this clown killed his baby brother. And so he wants to get revenge. He wants to kill it. And Richie's just like, there's no way you can kill it. There's just no freaking way. Bill said he would take his father's pistol. You know, he's going to take a gun. Richie says, what if it's not human? They're pretty certain of this at this point. If it's a monster, you can't kill it with a gun. And Bill says, you know, we'll figure it out. And those are very personal words to me, because, you know, whenever you get trouble in Bill, is all you get to say, we'll figure it out, you know? And for them, that was kind of all Bill had to say about it. I'm taking my gun. He also took his slingshot, and he says the rest they'll figure it out. So Richie's hesitant, but he decides to go with Billy the next day. Bill brought his father's pistol and his slingshot, and Richie, of course, being Richie, brought some sneezing powder. They hide Richie's bike in the Barrens so they can ride double if they get in trouble and need a quick getaway. They ride to Niebolt Street. There's a dead end after the end of the street. The street is deserted. They got off the bike and walked with Silver to the actual house. Niebolt Street houses used to be inhabited by a bunch of engineers, conductors, yardmen, all before World War II, when the train system was a lot more active. Now it's mostly run down and only a few trains pass through there. They reach the house, they walk over to the porch and see the window underneath, just like Eddie had told them. Richie wants to leave. He's like, okay, we saw it, you know, there's the house, there is the porch, there is the window. And he's like, let's go. Bill is determined to look inside, and he pulls out his gun and starts to crawl into the window. Richie freaks out at this point. Going in was definitely not part of his plan. And so, let's see. Bill's voice floated up. You can stay up there if you want, Richie. Stand guard. Instead, he rolled over in his belly and shoved his legs through the cellar window before his nerve could go bad on him, hoping he wouldn't cut his hands or stomach on the broken glass. Something clutched his legs, and Richie screamed. It's just me, Bill hissed. And a moment later, Richie was standing beside him in the cellar, pulling down his shirt and his jacket. "Who did you think it was?" "The boogeyman," Richie said, and then laughed shakily. "You go that way and I'll go, fuck that." I like that. "You go that way and I'll go. Bill doesn't even finish his words. Ricky says, "Fuck that." He could actually hear his heartbeat in his voice, making it sound bumpy and uneven, first up and then down. "I'm sticking with you, Big Bill." Richie began, and then the door at the end of this, they started to kind of explore the cellar, and they see like a lot of coal and stuff like that. You know, in 1958, these houses were used in the 1920s and 30s, so your heating system isn't what it is now. It's just like coal fire pits or whatever. So Richie was like, "Let's go this way," but as he began, and then the door of the head of the cellar crashed open against the wall with a violent bang, spilling thin white daylight down the stairs. Both boys screamed. Richie heard snarling sounds. They were very loud, the sounds of a wild animal in a cage might make. He saw loafers descend the steps, faded jeans on top of them, swinging hands. But they weren't hands, they were paws, huge, misshapen paws. Climb the coal," Bill was screaming, but Richie stood frozen, suddenly knowing what was coming for them, what was going to kill him in the cellar of the stank of damp earth and the cheap wine that had been spilled in the corners, knowing but needed to see. "There's a window at the top of the coal." That was Billy screeching. The paws were covered with dense brown hair that curled and coiled like wire. The fingers were tipped with jagged nails. Now Richie saw a silk jacket. It was black with orange piping and the Derry High School colors. "Go!" Bill screamed and gave Richie a gigantic shove. Richie went sprawling into the coal. Sharp jags and corners of it poked him painfully, breaking through his daze. More coal avalanched over his hands. That mad snarling went on and on. Panic slipped its hood over Richie's mind. Barely aware of what he was doing, he scrambled up the mountain of coal, gaining ground, sliding back, lunging upward again, screaming as he went. The window at the top was grimed with black coal dust and let in next to no light at all. It was latched shut. Richie seized the latch, which was that sort that turned, and threw all his weight against it. The latch moved not at all. The snarling was closer now. The gun went off below him, the sound nearly deafening in the closed room. Gun smoke, sharp and acrid, stung Richie's nose. It shocked him back to some sort of awareness, and he realized he had been trying to turn the thumb latch the wrong way. He reversed the direction of the force he was applying, and the latch gave with a protracted, rusty squeal. Coal dust sifted down on his hands like pepper. The gun went off again with a second deafening bang. Bill Denbrough shouted, "You killed my brother, you fucker!" For a moment the creature which had come down the stairs seemed to laugh. It seemed to speak. It was as if a vicious dog had suddenly began to bark out of garbled words, and for a moment Richie thought the thing in the high school jacket snarled back, "I'm going to kill you too." "Richie!" Bill screamed then, and Richie heard coals clattering and falling again as Bill scrambled up. The snarls and roars continued. Wood splintered. There were mingled barks and howls, sounds out of a cold nightmare. Richie gave the window a tremendous shove, not caring if the glass broke, and cut his hands to ribbons. He was beyond caring. It did not break. It swung outward on an old steel hinge flaked with rust. More coal dust sifted down, this time on Richie's face. He wriggled out into the side yard like an eel, smelling sweet fresh air, feeling the long grass wisp at his face. He was dimly aware that it was raining. He could see the thick stalks of the giant sunflowers, green and hairy. The Walther went off a third time, and the beast in the cellar screamed, a primitive sound of pure rage. Then Bill cried, "It's got me, Richie! Help! It's got me!" Richie turned around on his hands and knees and saw the terrified circle of his friend's upturned face in the square of the oversized cellar window, through which a winter's load of coal had once been funneled each October. Bill was lying spread-eagled on the coal. His hands waved and clutched fruitlessly for the window frame, which was just out of reach. His shirt and jacket were rucked up almost to his breastbone, and he was sliding backward. No, he was being pulled backward by something. Richie could barely see. It was a moving, bulking shadow behind Bill, a shadow that snarled and gibbered and sounded almost human. Richie didn't need to see it. He had seen it the previous Saturday on the screen of the Aladdin Theater. It was mad, totally mad, but even so it never occurred to Richie to doubt either his own sanity or his conclusion. The teenage werewolf had Bill Denbrough, Only it wasn't that guy Michael Landon with a lot of makeup on his face and a lot of fake fur. It was real. As if to prove it, Bill screamed again. Richie reached in and caught Bill's hands in his own. The Walther pistol was in one of them, and for the second time that day, Richie looked into its black eye, only this time it was loaded. They tussled for Bill, Richie gripping his hands, the werewolf gripping his ankles. Get out of here, Richie, Bill screamed. Get! The face of the werewolf suddenly swam out of the dark. Its forehead was low and prognathous, covered with scant hair. Its cheeks were hollow and furry. Its eyes were dark brown, filled with a horrible awareness. Its mouth dropped open and it began to snarl. White foam ran from the corner of his thick lower lip in twin streams that dripped from his chin. The hair on its head was swept back in a gruesome parody of a teenager's DA. It threw its head back and roared, its eyes never leaving Richie's. Bill scrambled up the coal. Richie seized his forearms and pulled. For a moment he thought he was actually going to win. Then the werewolf laid hold of Bill's legs again, and he was yanked backward toward the darkness once more. It was stronger. It had laid hold of Bill, and it meant to have him. The creature in the cellar let out an ear-splitting roar of rage, but it seemed to Richie that there was another note in that bellow as well, perhaps fear or pain. He gave one more tremendous tug, and Bill flew out of the window and onto the grass. He stared up at Richie with dark, horrified eyes. The front of his jacket was smeared black with coal dust. Richie could hear coal tumbling and avalanching down again. A moment later, the werewolf's face filled the cellar window. It snarled at them. Its paws clutched at the listless grass. Bill still had the Walther. He had held onto the gun through all of it. Now he held it out in both hands, his eyes squinched down to slits, and he pulled the trigger. There was another deafening bang. Richie saw a chunk of the werewolf's skull tear free, and a torrent of blood spilled down the side of its face, matting the fur there and soaking the collar of the skull jacket it wore. Roaring, it began to climb out of the window, moving slowly, dreamily. Richie reached under his coat and into his back pocket. He brought out that envelope with the picture of a sneezing man on it. He tore it open as the bleeding, roaring creature pulled itself out of the window, forcing its way, claws digging deep furrows in the earth. Richie tore the packet open and squeezed it. A white cloud puffed into the werewolf's face. Its roar suddenly stopped. It stared at Richie with almost comic surprise and made a choked, wheezing sound. Its eyes, red and bleary, rolled over toward Richie and seemed to mark him once and forever. Then it began to sneeze. It sneezed again and again and again. Ropey strings of saliva flew from its muzzle. Greenish black clots of snot flew out of its nostrils. One of these splattered against Richie's skin and burned there like acid. He wiped it away with a scream of hurt and disgust. There was still anger in its face, but there was also pain. It was unmistakable. Bill might have heard it with his dad's pistol, but Richie had heard it more. The werewolf stopped sneezing as suddenly as it had started and lunged at Richie. It was quick, too, incredibly quick. Richie might have only sat there with the empty envelope of Dr. Rocky's sneezing powder in one hand, staring at the werewolf with a kind of drugged wonder, thinking how brown its fur was, how red the blood was, how nothing was in black and white in real life. He might have sat there until its paws closed around his neck and its long nails pulled his throat out, but Bill grabbed him again and pulled him to his feet. Richie stumbled after him. They ran around to the front of the house, and Richie thought, "It won't dare chase us anymore. We're on the street now. It won't dare chase us. It won't dare." But it was coming. He could hear it just behind them, gibbering and snarling and slobbering. There was Silver, still leaning against a tree. Bill jumped onto the seat and threw his father's pistol in the carrier basket where they had carried so many play guns. Richie chanced a glance behind him as he flung onto the package carrier and saw the werewolf crossing the lawn toward them, less than 20 feet away now. Blood and slobber mixed on its high school jacket. White bone gleamed through its pelt about the right temple. There were white smudges of sneezing powder on the sides of its nose, and Richie saw two other things which seemed to complete the horror. There was no zipper on the thing's jacket. Instead, there were big, fluffy orange buttons like pom-poms. The other thing that was worse, it was the other thing that made him feel as if he might faint, or just give up and let it kill him. A name was stitched on the jacket in gold thread. Stitched on the bloody left breast of the werewolf's jacket, stained but readable, were the words, Richie Tozier. It lunged at them. "Go, Bill!" Richie screamed. Silver began to move, but slowly, much too slowly. It took Bill so long to get going. The werewolf crossed the rutted path just as Bill pedaled into the middle of Niebolt Street. Blood splattered its faded jeans, and looking back over his shoulder, Filled with a kind of dreadful, unbreakable fascination that was akin to hypnosis, Richie saw the seams of the jeans were giving way in places, and tufts of coarse brown fur had sprung through. One paw groped for Richie. He screamed miserably and ducked away from it. The werewolf snarled and grinned. It was close enough so Richie could see the yellowing corneas of its eyes, could smell the sweet, rotten meat on its breath. Its teeth were crooked fangs. Richie screamed again as it swung a paw at him. He was sure it was going to take his head off, but the paw passed in front of him, missing by no more than an inch. The force of the swing blew Richie's sweaty hair back from his forehead. "Hi-yo, Silver! Away!" Bill screamed at the top of his voice. The werewolf roared again. "Oh my God, it sounds like it's right behind me," and Richie's wind was cut off as his shirt and jacket were jerked back against his windpipe. He made a gargling, choking sound and managed to grip Bill's middle just before he was pulled off the back of the bike. Bill tilted forward but held on to Silver's handlebar grips. For one moment, Richie thought the big bike could simply do a wheelie and spill both of them off the back. Then his jacket, which had been just about ready for the rag bag anyway, parted down the back with a loud ripping noise that sounded weirdly like a big fart. Richie could breathe again. He looked around and stared directly into those muddy, murderous eyes. Silver continued to pick up speed. He was beginning to feel the road now, beginning to fly. Bill could feel him go. Richie could hear the fast rattle thud of loafers on the macadam. He turned. The werewolf's paws struck him above the eyes with a stunning force, and for a moment Richie really did think the top of his head came off. Things suddenly seemed dim and unimportant. Sounds faded in and out. The color washed out of the world. He turned back, clinging desperately to Bill. Warm blood ran into his right eye, stinging. The paw swung again, striking the back fender this time. Richie felt the bike waver crazily, for a moment on the verge of tipping over, finally straightening out again. Bill yelled, "Hi-yo, Silver, away!" again, but that was too distant, like an echo heard just before it dies out. Richie closed his eyes and held on to Bill and waited for the end. So once again, Bill Dennebraw found himself racing to beat the devil, only now the devil was a hideously grinning clown whose face sweated white grease paint, whose mouth curved up in a lingering red vampire smile, whose eyes were bright silver coins. A clown who was, for some lunatic reason, wearing a Derry high school jacket over its silvery suit with the orange ruff and the orange pom-pom buttons. So yeah, Richie wanted to leave, and they didn't. They instead crawled into the cellar, and they were almost killed by the werewolf. Once they were in the clear, Bill stopped because Richie is badly beaten up, and Richie comes to because he was passed out. And once they come to and they sit on the side of the sidewalk, they both start to cry, and the chapter ends as they comfort each other. Definitely theirs is more intense than the others have been so far. They probably should have went out and tried to hunt it, but as you can see now that Pennywise was pretty aggressive in this one. He gave chase. He didn't stop after they ran out of the cellar. He was done playing with them, and he wanted to kill them. He didn't succeed, and that's good for Richie and Bill. So